Hey guys, it's Halloween Dan here, doing a weird video today, I'm not gonna lie, a very different kind of video compared to what I've been doing recently, and it has just dawned on me as well that this is the third video where I'm wearing this top. Don't worry, it has been washed, I just really like this t-shirt. This video is not about props, well, it's sort of, but it isn't at the same time. It's more about Halloween itself and mine and the UK's weirdly sort of position on Halloween. And there's a reason why I'm making this video. And the reason is my American audience. So I know I've got one or two, I don't know actually how many people follow me who are from the US. If you're from the US and you watch this channel, just give me a little wave in the comments section, let me know where you're from. But I know there's a few of you guys out there, and I'm always talking about how much I love props from the US and and the North America in general, how much I think you guys do Halloween correctly, bang on. Sometimes, occasionally, I'll get asked the question, sometimes in the comments, sometimes to me directly, why is it that you guys just don't do Halloween? Why don't you have Home Depot? Why don't you have Spirit Halloween? Why don't you have availability of these props? What is the reason? Or just the more general question, why don't you guys do Halloween? Why is it still a thing that's only growing? I thought Halloween came from your part of the world. And to answer that question, it's a very complicated, going down the rabbit hole kind of a question. But I thought this video would be one where I just thought I'd kind of try and answer that question as best I can. So, strap in guys, it's about to get a little bit historical. So yes, I come from the UK, a very old country with very old traditions. And for a period of time, across all of the UK, what we now think of as Halloween was a commonplace practice across the whole of the UK. It still is very much a commonplace practice across parts of Scotland and Wales and parts of Northern Ireland, and of course mainland Republic of Ireland. They definitely go all in for Samhain, is what the traditional sort of Celtic name for Halloween is. But historians and people who are interested in this sort of stuff argue back and forth about exactly where Halloween fits into this whole story. Was it Samhain? Was Samhain something completely different? Is Halloween, well, All Hallows Eve a more later on thing? But the basic gist of it is that at some time in late autumn, around October 31st, across northwestern Europe, from the Dark Ages and before, thousands of years ago, people would celebrate the changing of the seasons through harvest festivals and possibly even New Year's Eve, because it possibly might have been celebrated as a New Year's Eve type of a festival around the 31st of October. This went back hundreds, thousands of years, and people would celebrate in this way of lighting bonfires and sharing harvest foods. And at some point as well, the sort of correlation between the dead and really it was a sort of remembrance of the dead, a remembrance of the ancestor. So that is where the whole dead person kind of thing kind of comes into Halloween a little bit, because it's remembering the dead, remembering the ancestors, and sort of it being less a spooky thing and more a kind of a family-friendly PG kind of a thing. Then the Christians came along and they kind of Christianized this event, sort of, by creating the Saints' Days. So they created the Saints' Days on the 1st and 2nd of November, and they became known as the Hallowed Days. And the 31st of October simply was named All Hallows Eve, the eve before the Hallowed Days. And traditionally people would do their harvest festivals and light their bonfires and all that kind of stuff on All Hallows Eve. So sort of combining the slightly pagan, old-fashioned way of celebrating this event with the new modern Christian way of celebrating this event and kind of combining it all together. In the same way we kind of do with Christmas and stuff. You know, there are lots of weird traditions we have at Christmas that are not very Christian, like hanging wreaths of holly and and stuff like that doesn't really mean an awful lot to the story of Christ, but it's an old pagan tradition that's kind of come along for the ride and is now incorporated into Christmas. So things were all going really well. All Hallows Eve was kind of being celebrated. The church were trying to turn people away from it a bit, trying to sort of say, no, this is an evil, scary thing, stop it. But people kept their traditions, kept on doing it, kept on finding ways around it, carving spooky guys like this to kind of keep away evil demons and all that kind of stuff. And the traditions of Halloween, or All Hallows Eve and Samhain, stayed alive. Then we get to around the late 1500s, early 1600s, and a very real change happens. And that change is the Puritans. Now, you guys in America will know about these guys because they're basically who you come from. They left Europe from persecution to set up their church how they wanted to be, praying to God and all that stuff over on your side of the pond. But what they also were a part of was this part of particularly England at that time, which had rejected everything Catholic and was trying to stay very, very Protestant. And for the Puritans, even the Protestants weren't Protestant enough. You know, it was about hard work and labour and dedicating yourself to Christ and Christ alone. No fun allowed. And for a period of time after the Civil War, this is jumping ahead a little, but for a period of time after the Civil War in England, when we were actually a republic for a little while, believe it or not, if you didn't know that part of English history, the guy in charge, Oliver Cromwell, actually outlawed Christmas because it was seen as sort of too flamboyant, too celebratory, when Christmas was supposed to be just a remembrance of Christ. You go to church, you go home, shut up, that's it. So Christmas was cancelled, literally, for basically the whole time he was in charge of England. I'm not going to lie, I'm not sure how long that was. Either way, this is the group of people who were in charge of England for a while, and they really didn't like anything that had even remotely Catholic celebratory roots. And of course, the Saints' Days, very Catholic, remembering saints and all that kind of stuff. And then All Hallows Eve, tied in with that, very Catholic. So it was being rejected. It was definitely being rejected already, and people were sort of being definitely warded off from it. But what ended up happening that was the kind of final death blow, at least in England, is an event that takes place. We still celebrate it to this day on the 5th of November. Now, I don't know, my American audience, you may or may not have heard of this, but on the 5th of November, we here in the UK, we celebrate Bonfire Night. Some people refer to it as Fireworks Night. I don't know who those people are, but it's Bonfire Night. And as the clue is in the name, we light a bonfire. That's what happens. Usually with an effigy of a guy on top. Literally, a guy called Guy Fawkes. The story goes back to 1605 when there was a conspiracy, a plot, a Catholic plot to blow up the Houses of Parliament with the King and all of his Protestant government inside it all at once, taking out the whole Protestant hierarchy in one hit. The plot failed. The plotters were gathered up, tortured and executed, of course they were, and the church saw it as such a coup. Up until this point, Protestantism in England had always kind of been under pressure from the Catholic side of the world, and this was kind of like, no, you know what, we were right all along, because if God was a Catholic, he'd have let this succeed. So you can shut your mouths now, we're 100% Protestant. Get on with you. So it was a huge coup for the church and the government and the king, of course, made a huge big deal about remembering this event, never letting it be forgotten. In fact, the most famous rhyme from that whole period of time is, remember, remember the 5th of November, the gunpowder treason and plot. I know of no reason why the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. And here in the UK, we get brought up on that. We know that rhyme, we know that story, we know all about Bonfire Night. Now, you might be wondering, what has this got to do with Halloween, apart from the fact that it's not far from it? And that plays an important role. November the 5th is only 5 days after Halloween, of course. And what that means is that the church basically told people at the time, don't light your harvest bonfires on the 31st of October. Don't eat your food and all that and share your harvest meals then, because, no offence, it's a bit pagan anyway, and also a little bit Catholic, you traitors. So save your firewood, save your harvest festival, and do it on the 5th of November instead. That's when you should be celebrating. That's what we should all be celebrating. And of course, people immediately changed tact. They started celebrating on the 5th instead of on the 31st of October. No one wanted to be seen as a traitor. No one wanted to be seen as a Catholic conspirator. So everyone, if they had any sense about them, started burning their bonfires and having their harvest festivals and doing all those things they'd been doing for generations on the 5th instead of on the 31st. And so almost overnight, the celebration of All Hallows Eve and Samhain, or whatever you want to call it, died a death in the Protestant parts of the UK, which was mainly England and Wales and bits of Scotland. And we still celebrate Bonfire Night to this day. It's a huge deal. People get really, really het up about Bonfire Night in this country. And it is the celebration of that in England mainly that led to the demise of All Hallows Eve and eventually Halloween. And why it just never, people knew about it, it was on the calendar, but nobody celebrated it because their focus was firmly on the 5th. And that was that. So you American guys are probably wondering, well, hang on a minute. Weren't we like settled by you guys? Weren't we like a colony of you guys for a while? Yeah, sorry about that. You were, yeah. Of course, you were settled at the time when all this was going on. So in the 1600s, you would have been aware of Guy Fawkes and the Civil War and all that kind of stuff. It all would have been a part of your history as much as it was ours. So then you're probably wondering, well, how can we celebrate All Hallows Eve, Halloween, then? Why do we do it and you don't? And the answer is those plucky old Irish. Yeah, so basically, in the 1800s, there was an influx of Irish immigrants to the US, and the Irish, unlike the British, unlike those within the UK, kept hold of their Catholic roots. The Irish never gave up Catholicism, at least not what is now the Republic of Ireland, part of Ireland, and because of that, they kept hold of all their traditions. They kept the Saints' Days. So All Hallows Eve and Samhain, which had been sort of tied into that celebration, remained in Ireland. And all the traditions, carving of a jack-o'-lantern, doing a form of trick-or-treating, which was more trick than treat, to be fair, and all that kind of stuff stayed with the Irish. And as they journeyed across the Atlantic and settled in the US, they took these traditions with them. And guess what? They took off because people quite liked it. People enjoyed it. It was kind of fun. And by the 1900s, it was a thing, but I think it was kind of a slightly antisocial thing in the US. A lot of people playing tricks and tomfoolery and naughtiness. And some woman, I can't remember her name, but she came along and basically she sanitized it and turned it into what we now think of as Halloween. She turned it less about causing destruction to people's property and more about sort of having a fun party and dressing up and eating nice food and having some sweets and all that kind of stuff. So, yes, thank you, woman who did that. But, yay. And now we have what is modern Halloween. And you guys were the creators of modern Halloween in that sense. So then you get back to the UK. We're now in the 21st century. And Halloween is a growing back kind of a thing. It's kind of manoeuvred itself back across the pond and we are starting to embrace it again. And that's happening for two reasons, I think. I think it's because people like it, it's fun. But secondly as well, I think it's because Bonfire Night nowadays, in today's slightly woke society, is seen as a little bit dodgy. Like, we are literally teaching our children to celebrate a period of time in our history where it was okay to kind of be anti-Catholic. Kind of a little bit, should we really be celebrating this? So there's a huge sort of backlash against the 5th of November here in the UK. People still celebrate it and people still enjoy it, but there are also a lot of people who really, really don't. So it's kind of on the fence at the minute. And I think it's as the 5th of November kind of diminishes in importance in the UK, things like Halloween start to grow in importance and it's becoming more and more of a thing. And I genuinely believe that in a generation or two from now, maybe not even that far ahead in time, Halloween will be a set on the calendar event, maybe even as big as it is in the US here in the UK. Because there are people like me bringing their children up, thinking of it as a complete norm and going out and trick-or-treating and doing all that stuff. Why wouldn't they carry on with that tradition with their own children and their grandchildren? Why wouldn't they do that? It's the most fun thing there is. Anyway, guys, sorry for getting a little bit historical on you. Sorry for really going down that road. I just thought I had to sort of explain it. I have briefly done this before, this kind of video, in some of my earlier videos, but I just wanted to sort of go over it again because I do continually get asked the question, why do you guys really not do Halloween? Why don't you have these stores full of animatronics? And it's because it's still in its infancy here, really, in a way. It traditionally comes from this part of the world, but we kind of gave it up for a long while, and now we're just kind of finding our feet with it again. So on that basis, the stores and things here just haven't quite woken to its potential yet, I would say. But I think, like I say, a few years from now, a few years down the line, that will be a very different story. At least I hope it is. I really do. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Keep it spooky. Bye.